U.S. President Donald Trump says that he believes a trade deal can be worked out with Prime Minister Mark Carney in the coming days.
Khalistani protesters assembled in downtown Calgary to chant "Kill Modi," protesting the Indian Prime Minister's visit to Canada for the G7 summit.
A man who killed 2 people and injured 3 while driving high on meth was released on bail. Hello Canada, it's Tuesday, June 17th, and this is the True North Daily Brief. I'm Cosmin, Dzsurdzsa.
And I'm Geoff Knight.
We've got you covered with all the news you need to know. Let's discuss the top stories of the day and the True North exclusives you won't hear anywhere else. U.S. President Donald Trump believes a trade deal with Prime Minister Mark Carney could be reached within days as the two met at the G7 summit in Kananaskis, Alberta. Trump was asked why the Canada-U.S. trade dispute has endured for so long, to which he replied that he and Carney had different concepts, with Trump's being a, quote, tariff concept. Trump told reporters, quote, Mark has a different concept, which is something that some people like, but we're going to see if we can get to the bottom of it today. I'm a tariff person. I've always been a tariff person. It's simple, it's easy, it's precise, and it just goes very quickly. The U.S. president said he thought a deal could be reached, quote, within days, but that both parties would have to agree.
Our primary focus will be trade and trade with Canada, and I'm sure we can work something out.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so much. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, I didn't up a deal with Canada.
How close are you
Say
to
it.
a deal?
What is holding up a deal with Canada from your perspective?
It's not so much holding up. I think we have different concepts. I have a tariff concept, and Mark has a different concept, which is something that some people like. But we're going to see if we can get to the bottom of it today. I'm a tariff person. I've always been a tariff. It's simple, it's easy, it's precise, and it just goes very quickly. And I think Mark has a more complex idea, but also very good. So we're going to look at both, and we're going to see what we're going to come out with something. Hopefully.
Mr. President, do you think a deal is achievable within days, within weeks? Is there that kind of runway?
Yeah, it's achievable. Both parties have to agree.
However, Trump appeared more preoccupied with the absence of Russian President Vladimir Putin, who was removed from the group 11 years ago. Russia was suspended indefinitely following the annexation of Crimea in 2014, resulting in the political forum's name being reverted from G8 to G7. Media questions then waded into the Iran-Israel conflict and U.S. deportations before Carney ended the press conference. The meeting marks the first time the pair have met in person since May, when Carney visited the White House in Washington, D.C. Government officials previously told the media about secret discussions between the two leaders and top cabinet ministers earlier this month. Government sources said the two have been trying to resolve tariff relations behind closed doors to ensure the best possible scenario, with many of Canada's retaliatory tariffs being removed in April. So it's some positive news that there seems to be development in the trade tariff discussions, but whether the trade deal that emerges out of this process is actually beneficial to Canada or not is yet to be seen. And I'm sure the Carney government is hoping that the outcome will be seen as a beneficial one when they essentially campaigned for re-election on the slogan of elbows up with regards to the United States. But what might that look like, Geoff? What has to be in this trade deal for Prime Minister Mark Carney, in particular with the renegotiation of the USMCA, for it to be considered a success for the Liberal government?
Yeah, Cosmin, well, there's several key elements that must be included in the deal. First, Carney needs a significant rollback of the U.S.'s 25% tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, which have disrupted exports and cost the industry an estimated $2 billion monthly. Restoring tariff-free access for these critical sectors would stabilize manufacturing jobs, particularly in Ontario and Quebec, where plants like Honda's Alliston facility have faced production shifts. Secondly, the deal must secure exemptions or reduced tariffs on Canadian energy exports, especially oil and gas, to diversify markets beyond the U.S., where 97% of Canada's oil currently goes. This would align with Carney's pivot to Asia, as Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has pushed for pipelines to access higher-priced Asian markets, potentially adding $5 to $10 per barrel to Canadian oil. Third, a successful renegotiation should include provisions to protect Canada's auto sector, ensuring that the 50% ZEV mandate by 2030 isn't undermined by U.S. tariffs, which have already prompted Stellantis and Ford to shift operations south. Finally, Carney must secure a commitment to avoid future unilateral tariff hikes, providing long-term predictability amid Trump's tariff concept preference, which Carney has resisted. Without these elements, tariff relief, energy market access, auto sector stability, and trade security, the deal risks being seen as a concession to Trump's approach rather than a win for Canada's economic resilience. Chants of Kill Modi rang out in downtown Calgary as Khalistan separatist activists gathered to protest Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Canada for the G7 summit. The demonstration has sparked alarm over the violent rhetoric directed at a democratically elected foreign leader on Canadian soil by proponents of a movement that has a history of politically motivated terrorist attacks and assassinations. Prime Minister Mark Carney's decision to attempt to mend Canada-India relations by inviting Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to the G7 has spurred protests from Canada's Khalistan separatists in various locations. Around 50 Khalistan protesters descended on Calgary in a convoy to protest Modi and to advocate for a referendum to allow a new Sikh-majority country to be carved out of India. Juno News' Cian Bexty was on the scene as activists descended on Calgary City Hall, where protesters could be heard chanting, quote, "Kill Modi," followed by, quote, "politics." Khalistan supporters protested Modi's arrival, promoting the event with signs featuring crosshairs over the face of the democratically elected leader of India, who was invited as a guest to Canada. Other chants included "Boycott Air India." According to Mocha Bazurgan, an independent journalist, others chanted, quote, "Parmar's ideology is ours to guide," a reference to a Sikh activist accused of taking part in the Montreal Air India bombings in 1985. Sikhs for Justice, the group that organized the quote-unquote peaceful demonstration, told True North the planned 48-hour rally was called Ambush Modi Politics. The RCMP did not respond to True North's request for comment. The organizers, Sikhs for Justice, are a group banned in India. Gurpatwant Singh Panun, listed as a terrorist by the Indian government and general counsel for the SFJ, told True North that the protests would remain peaceful, but called for accountability for the alleged assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. India-Canada relations have been strained since former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau accused the Indian government of assassinating Nijjar too. The Indian government did not respond to True North's requests for comment. So, Cosmin, how do these protests affect Prime Minister Carney's effort to mend relations with India?
Well, primarily it looks awful on the international stage when we're hosting a bunch of different world leaders at the G7 summit in Alberta, and these inter-ethnic conflicts play out on Canadian streets. And it's all over social media. I am sure the news, the legacy media, is doing its best to bury it. But it just goes to show how low we have fallen. And it's a testament to what radical and mass immigration policies have produced in this country, where people are emboldened to go out on the streets and, tongue-in-cheek call for the proverbial killing of people they disagree with in their own home country. And it's not the first time the Khalistan movement has had a long history of radical statements, demands, and protests. It goes all the way back here in British Columbia. There were parades annually in Surrey in the past years where they had floats glorifying the terrorists on the Air India bombing attack, which remains the largest terrorist attack perpetrated in Canadian history. And to this day, essentially, the RCMP and federal government have not done anything to condemn or crack down on this growing separatist movement within Canada. And they're becoming more emboldened each and every single year. A man accused of killing 2 people and injuring 3 others in a deadly meth-induced dangerous driving incident was granted bail on Wednesday. A Vancouver provincial court judge ruled on June 12th that Chai Sun Park, the accused in a motor vehicle accident that caused the deaths of 2 people and injured 3 others while he was allegedly driving under the influence of methamphetamine, should be released on bail. Chai-Sun Park, 35, faces 15 charges related to the accident, which occurred last February. RCMP said at the time that an eastbound vehicle was stopped on the side of the highway when it was struck by an SUV between 3:30 a.m. and 3:45 a.m., with the SUV presumably driven by Park. According to police, one person was already dead when they arrived on the scene, and 2 others were taken to the hospital in critical condition, with one later passing away. The deadly accident claimed the lives of Mursal Arifi and Jenna Hepperly. Park is charged with 2 counts of dangerous driving causing death, along with 13 other charges, including 5 counts of driving while on methamphetamine, causing either death or bodily injury. The charges were sworn on June 9th, and Park appeared before Vancouver Provincial Court Judge Susanna Sanga for a bail hearing. Park, who was not in custody prior to the hearing, was released without any financial bail obligation. The details of why he was provided bail are covered by a standard publication ban. Geoff, this amounts to essentially a slap on the wrist for this individual suspected to be responsible for the deaths of 2 people, to the justice system's ability to protect the community at large.
Yeah, releasing Chai-Sun Park on bail definitely endangers the Vancouver community, given the severity of the charges and the circumstances surrounding the incident. Park faces 15 charges, including 2 counts of dangerous driving causing death and 5 counts of driving while on methamphetamine causing death. The RCMP reported that the accident occurred when Park allegedly struck a stopped vehicle on Highway 1 while under the influence, suggesting a reckless disregard for safety that could certainly recur if he drives again. His release without financial bail on June 12th, despite not being in custody prior, raises concerns about insufficient measures to prevent further risk, especially since methamphetamine impairment is known to impair judgment and reaction time, contributing to over 3,500 drug-impaired driving incidents in Canada in 2017 alone. The lack of transparency due to the publication ban on bail details amplifies community fears, as it leaves residents uncertain about safeguards like monitoring or restrictions on driving. Vancouver's proximity to major highways and its dense population means any repeat incident could have devastating consequences, particularly given the city's history of traffic-related fatalities, with 42 deaths reported in 2024. The decision to grant bail, even if based on legal technicalities like Park's prior freedom, overlooks the potential for ongoing substance abuse or mental health issues, which studies link to a 50% recidivism rate for drug-impaired drivers within 5 years, according to a 2020 Canadian Centre on Substance Use and Addiction report. Without strict conditions, such as mandatory sobriety checks or house arrest, this release could expose the community to a heightened and preventable danger.
That's it for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in. You can stay on top of new episodes every weekday by subscribing to the Daily Brief on iTunes and Spotify. Also, while you're at it, make sure to hit us with a 5-star rating and please leave a review.